Hi, Lynn Gilliland here, Lessons from Leaders. This is part 2 with Ann Lynham Goddard, the President and CEO of ChildFund. She's been in that seat for 13 years. She spent 20 years in a previous living overseas, and I think she said 5 continents. So she had quite a bit of field experience before she took on the role that she has now. If you didn't listen to part 1, you don't want to miss it. Part 2, we talk a lot about what courage has to do with being a leader, and some of the things that keep her up at night. We also talked about advice that she has for that she would have given her younger self. Really quite a rich discussion. You don't want to miss it. So everyone, Ann Lynham Goddard from ChildFund. Welcome back, everybody. This is part 2 with Ann from ChildFund, and we are so, again, we are getting into the meat of things. So if you didn't get to part 1, you want to catch it. And let's jump in, Ann, and talk about ChildFund has a very ambitious strategy, which will tell us about that, and then we'll take it from there.
So ChildFund is an 80-year-old organization. And I think we got to the point that I think it's incumbent on us to figure out how we can scale up more what we do as an international NGO. I say this even though some people would say we're at scale, we reach about 13, 14 million people a year. But when you look at the problem, particularly post-COVID, the problems are only bigger. Mm-hmm. So we put out a big, hairy, audacious goal, a BHAG. We started it before the pandemic, but decided to continue. It's appropriate during. And we aligned it with the SDGs that by 2030, we'll reach 100 million children and family members. And we'll help those children grow up to be healthy, educated, skilled, and safe, which are the 4 components of our work. So we started it, and I said to all staff, I have no idea how we're going to reach that, right? It's just not doing what we're doing and multiplying it by 8 or 10 or whatever. And everybody knew that. So we decided to put out a crowdsourcing approach. So with board members, some partners, but mostly with staff, we put out, what's your idea of how we could reach that and all different aspects. So we crowdsource over 175 ideas, we honed them down, we grouped them, and then we got a bunch of teams working on them now. But I constantly say that we don't know the answers yet. All the answers are coming from this, and that's true. I threw my ideas into the mix like anyone else. My board did. We all filled out things online. And this is kind of new for us because I've never put out something so bold before, and I've been the CEO there now for 13 years. We've always done this, and this is probably the 3rd or 4th strategy we've developed, and we've always, worked on it together as a staff. It's always participatory, and then the new strategic directions or whatever emerge from it. But this is putting something out and asking everybody a road to that path. So that took a little courage, I think, to do that. I think some people were a little shocked. But I think it was the right thing for the organization, not only because we're 80 years old, but because there's a lot of talk, and rightfully so, the growth of local civil society in the countries we're working in. What's a special contribution an INGO can make? And I think scale is one of them. So
are there any nights that you didn't sleep because you were worried or scared?
I had to bring my board along a little bit with it. They had a broader idea than, in some ways, different ideas, but that's coming together nicely now. I think we're all converging on a couple things. I go to sleep okay. I'm the kind of person who wakes up 3 o'clock in the morning, then starts thinking about it. So yeah, I've had a couple middle of the night, particularly before a big meeting where we're pulling things together. We're about 75% of the way through the process now. And it's coming together. We're as a learning, as it's approach to learning. We're dividing it into 3 parts. So the first 2 years will really be testing ideas. So we're going through the process now of figuring out what are our best ideas. And some of them might not turn out to be good, but hopefully we'll learn and pivot in the process and pick out the 2 or 3 things we think we could really scale. And that we've tested our way to that. I explain to staff, it's like the vaccines that we're all talking about now, right? Mm-hmm. Tested on 10 people, then you do 100 people, then you do 1,000, 10,000, 1 million. That's how we'll test our way to seeing if we have some ideas that work.
And then, so thanks for sharing that, that you do have little moments where you go, oh,
Who doesn't?
What are we going to do now? And can I really lead us this direction now that I said that we would go this direction? So earlier, you and I were talking about what being uncomfortable has to do with being a leader. And you're just actually, those are some uncomfortable moments, right?
Yeah. I think that a leader really needs to be able to hold the anxiety that people have for uncertainty and discomfort in something. Some of the staff wanted to know right away which countries were going to do this. They wanted details. And I had to say, no, we don't know those things yet, right? And in my comfort level of how I say, and that's okay, that helps them and holds their anxiety about it being okay. And reaffirming all the time that together we'll figure out the next steps and we'll learn as we go. So I felt this in other situations where during the history of being the CEO of ChildFund, that it was really important to hold that kind of anxiety and uncomfortability, unknowingness, and feel comfortable with everything not being certain. And if you can do that as a leader, I think you reduce the anxiety of staff. I'm not always 100% good at that by any means, right? Sometimes I want to jump to the end and say, what's the answer there? But I'm at my best when I exhibit that it's okay. I'm confident we're going to get there. We just need a process together and we'll test our way to it.
Do you ever share that you're scared too? You do.
Yeah. Particularly more, I would say more with my media team, but I wouldn't use the word scared with staff, but I might say, it's not all clear. We don't all know it yet. Some of the questions you're asking, I can't answer yet, but we will know them by the time we get to that point.
And I think that, to me, is the authenticity, and that, amazingly enough, does provide people, in my experience, comfort. Like, you don't have to pretend that you know it all. There's just the fact of, I believe in us, and we will have that figured out, seems to be quite a high positive impact. And has that been your experience?
Yes, it is. It is. But we'll still have people who want to know the details. And even board members who might want to know the details. But in general, it works well. It works well.
Because just a moment on that is we're all wired differently, and some of us feel more safe when we know A, B, C, D, E, F.
Right.
Other of us are fine. We're just heading that way. Okay, good. Let's go. So it's
probably
all those people. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably in that latter group. I don't particularly want to know all the steps. I want to know that we have a clear picture of where we're going. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you can learn as you go along, And that was to our COVID response, right? We had to come up with a plan really quick that would work worldwide. We came up with a very high level plan, 4 priorities, but told the staff then, okay, you know how to work it out in your situation. So they knew where we were going, and they knew they had the space to implement the way they should and use their funding the way they should to do it. We didn't say you have to spend it all on this or that or whatever. Obviously restricted donor money is different, but the other funds we had, and I think it worked well. I think staff are responsible. They know what they're doing. I don't want to give them all the details. It's hard enough being an 80-year-old organization and having a lot of habit, right? That's the way you do something. And if you put too much habit into everything, or too many words into everything, telling everybody exactly what to do, it just doesn't work.
That makes sense. So what do you think that courage has to do with leadership?
Well, just being willing to be a leader, to put your head above the crowd. I think that takes some courage. Certainly it was intimidating when I first took on the role of a CEO. I think going back to when I first took on being a country director of a country overseas, I guess it's having confidence in yourself, right? And even though you haven't done this before, you know that you can do it. And I think that's the courage part, right? And that you'll be able to draw on, and I've certainly had great mentors. And specifically, when I joined, I got a mentor of someone with a lot of experience with board and board governance. That was a very intimidating part for me. So I got someone, and I would call them up every once in a while and say, what do you think about this? Help me with this. So, but it's being willing to take on something you haven't done before, or lead the organization in a way you haven't done before. So that does take courage, it does. You have to have courage in yourself, and you have to have faith and trust in your staff, that you picked good people, that they can come the journey with you, and they will be part of the answer. To me, that's what diversity is all about, right? We each have part of the answer, and we get those pieces out of everybody and put it together for the best picture.
And weren't you telling me that also that you had to learn to stay out of the weeds? So talk about that.
Yeah, I was very operational for a long time overseas, so I could easily get very into the details. And sometimes I found myself trying not to do that in two ways it happened. One, just in meetings, and I would literally put my hands under my legs and sit on them, right? To stop myself, reminding myself, don't say too much about all the details, right? Let them work it all out. But in the other ways, it was, I'm sorry, I forgot the point I was going to make.
Well, that's the one that you told me, that you yourself, since you knew the field, since you knew the work, you had to learn to stop. And you remember now, you had to learn not to go there, that you hired the people to do that, to make decisions. And I'm up here.
I had to stay at the top, right? And when you're not sure, it's easy to go, thank you for that. It's easy to go back into your old role of what you're good at. But you have to learn to stay at the right level. And, we have regional directors, we have country directors, they know what they're doing. And once I got to know them, I realized they do know what they're doing. They actually know more now than I knew, because they're more up to date and they have different skill sets and all that. So it was learning to stay out of that. And I know the example I was thinking of the other day was, we've had 2 or 3 crises in my time at ChildFund, and COVID being one crisis. And at that time, I had to get really deep down into something, and I had to. But I had to learn then when to end it and step away and come back and go up at my level. And that's hard to do, because you could easily stick down there. But I successfully have done that. Sometimes better than other times. But it's okay sometimes to get hands-on in a crisis, right? But then step away.
And I think that is so challenging for leaders that have done the work like you have, because you have your opinion, you have your insights, you have your lived experience. And so to stay hands off on that, it requires personal discipline.
Yeah. Particularly, I would have board members sometimes ask me very specific, detailed questions.
Yeah.
And I learned to answer them after a while with, if I knew that answer, I really wouldn't be doing my job, because I shouldn't be working at that level, right? I can get you that. I'll find out if you're interested and get it back to you, but I don't know it now. And that's, you have to be able to push back a little bit, because anybody can draw you down in. And when you've been operational, it's really easy to go operational. It's familiar. You kind of mourn, and you can mourn for it and miss it from the past, right? I loved the different jobs I had, but that isn't what the organization needs,
And there's a believing in what your role is, so that you can say that to a board member, and conviction and courage, right? Yeah. I
had a great consultant who helped us through the first strategy that we worked for ChildFund, and she very clearly and this is your role. You have to do this. Nobody else can do this. Let other people do that. And she'd constantly remind me. So it was a good training come strategy development that helped me realize, taught me and nurtured me along to where I should stay. What role should I be in, and what role other people have to play. So she was very helpful.
And what I want to also highlight from that story is that the learning that goes on as a leader, you didn't come first into the role fully formed, no mistakes, no learnings. It's a process. And that's exactly as it should be, and be comfortable with that. You're going to learn and change and grow and make mistakes and adjust.
Sometimes when I talk to other CEOs, or they just comment something in a gathering, and I'm involved with groups of nonprofit CEOs, but I'm also about a year or two ago joined a group of for-profit CEOs too, kind of a mentoring group. And sometimes I'm amazed at the level of what they're doing. I think you shouldn't be doing that. Why do you know that? You shouldn't be doing that. And it's been, and I think, but I look back in my earlier career, and when I first came as a CEO, I was doing some of those things, right? So I'm a better CEO now. I've learned to let other staff do the things that they should do. One of my staff said to me once early on, "And I'm afraid to ask you to do something that's below your pay grade." And that was a staff person that to me. She said, "Because it's wasting the time and money of ChildFund." And I thought, wow, I never thought of it like that. I used to think I want to be humble enough that I can do anything, right? I shouldn't be like I'm a CEO and I can't do that anymore. But that was a good pushback that she gave me, right? That the organization needs you to play your role and let other people play their role.
Well, and I also yay to her, 10 points to her. And also like that she's like, it's not a good use of ChildFund resources. That is spot on. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I agree.
And as we come to the end, what advice would you give your younger self? Looking back, if you could give your beautiful and younger self, maybe a country director, or maybe when you assumed this role, what did you wish you knew, or what advice would you give yourself?
I think that each organization, any organization, is a living, breathing thing. And you can't turn it into something that it's not. And it's your job as a leader to figure out what it's really, really good at and then make that better and bigger. I think when I took my job, people thought I was going to try to turn my organization into the organization I spent 20 years in. And I quickly realized, no, I couldn't do that. It took a while to figure out what really was the part of ChildFund that I really should make bigger and better. There were lots of things, but what is the one that would really make a big difference? So that would be one advice. I would also say definitely learn I'd say this to anybody in their career, learn 360 degrees of your business, right? The more you know about the whole side of it, the more then you're comfortable with it all and you don't have to get into all the details. But in the beginning, make sure you know the 360 degree view of it. Spend more time externally, maybe, with groups that I'm really glad I joined this for-profit CEO group, right? They look at things differently. And I think it's good to have different perspectives on things. And just relax. I mean, my old mentor, who was a CEO, said to me once, "And there is a rhythm to our work. If you make a mistake one year, it'll come back next year and you'll be able to fix it and make it better." So don't worry about it too much. So that was what I do. Usually things will, if you don't get it right, they'll come back and you'll have a chance at it again and you'll do better at that time.
And thank you. I love all of those. And what I want to pull out of the last one is, in some ways, we're saying let's not be perfectionists. Go forward. The mistakes will be made. You'll have a chance to rectify it. So.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly not a perfectionist. I certainly try to do the best for ChildFund, and ChildFund should do its best work. But actually, perfectionism is, everybody has their own definition of that too, right? So I have to accept that. So yes, you always have a chance to go back and do it again the second time.
And thank you so much for coming in and spending time with us, for sharing what ChildFund is doing. And I'm actually quite interested. We'll want to hear how you're going with, is it 100 million?
Yes, 100 million children and family members by 2030.
So we'll want to have you back in to see what you've learned. And I love some of the things you guys are doing is so interesting, like the crowdsourcing. So thank you for your time.
It was great spending time with you, Lynn, and I'd be happy to come back and tell you what we learned, because I'm sure we'll learn a lot in our journey. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks.